What's up, everybody? Starting something new with askfp on the screen. Going to try to do this every time. Jumping into the question real quick. Trevor Allen wants to know if the Bulls starters play at the high level that we're used to, can they beat the Cavs in 7 games? Answer that question to me is yes, but the question, really, the biggest thing is can they play at a high level? Because we're not seeing that in the series with the Bucks. We're seeing them turn it on and off. Defensive intensity wavering. I don't know. Jacob Trizos, probably messed that up. You let me know what's good. But Jacob says, with the call-up of Addison Russell and Baez returning later this season, should Castro be traded for an outfielder? I don't think he should be traded for an outfielder, but I do think they can entertain the option of trading him. But I would say more for starting pitching. The Cubs need to match all of those young bats in the lineup with some young arms. C.J. Edwards is coming, but they need some more as well. Nicholas Not-So-Cage. With the Eagles acquiring Tim Tebow and DeMarco Murray in the offseason, do you think they will at least make a wild card spot? Well, I don't know if Tebow is going to have very much of an impact on that. They have to find some stability at quarterback. So they got a ton of guys in there. DeMarco Murray definitely helps. They got a ton of guys in there, but they got to get something going in terms of stability with quarterback. Nicholas Not-So-Cage again says, do you think that when the Lakers trade Nick Young, Swaggy P, it will hurt the Lakers at all or make them better? It really depends. It really depends because Nick Young is a really good six-man guy to come in to give you instant offense. But if you're trying to on a bad team, he doesn't really make much of an impact. But I think if you surround players around him and allow him to play the role he's supposed to, I think then he makes a bigger impact. Chicago sports fan says, what running back will have the best season in the NFL? I think this is going to come down to one of 3 guys, and I actually think they'll play for the same team. It's either going to be Joseph Randle, Darren McFadden, if he can stay healthy, or if the Dallas Cowboys draft a running back. The Cowboys' offensive line is so dominant, whatever above average running back, which is what they're going to have, you put behind that line, is going to have a great season. Chicago sports fan also says, in Madden 16, will you do a PCO, the player, coach, owner? And what happens to Madden 15 PCO? Well, I'm trying to work on, finishing up my series. I've talked about that before. I really like the idea, but it does take a lot of production. So I'm going to definitely try it again. I'm not going to say I'm going to try it again. I'm going to do it this time. And if I do it this time, if I do start it, it will be finished. And I'll make the provisions to make sure that it is. Rollins for Champion 15 says, can Bray Wyatt thrive as a babyface in the WWE? I think it's time for a change. I think he could thrive. To a certain extent, he already is a babyface. I do think they need to do something different. All of these, schizophrenic promos off in a corner somewhere and him talking the same exact way, it is getting old and the impact of it is leaving. When he first did it, it was chilling. Now it's kind of like, okay, Bray's in a dark room by himself again, whispering. Hey. Chicago sports fan says, what do you think about the Bears-Packers game on Thanksgiving? I think it's awesome. You got the oldest rivalry in the NFL on a day where you got 3 or 4 games, so it's going to take center stage. I think this should, to me, be like a tradition. I think it should be a tradition. The Bears-Packers, maybe Steelers, Ravens, the biggest rivalries I think should take place on Thanksgiving. Rollins for Champion 15 says, how would you rate Seth Rollins' new finisher? Is it better than the curb stomp? No, it's not better than the curb stomp. I do understand why they banned the curb stomp, though. Safety got to come first. And I also understand why Seth chose a finisher like this, because for smaller guys, you want to make sure you pick a finisher that's not a lifting move, because it limits what you can do against a bigger guy. So, you just can't do it. So I think that he's at the right idea. I just don't particularly like that little swinging DDT. It's not great to me. Chicago sports fan again says, who will have a better season, the Cubs or the Sox? And I'm not being biased here because everybody knows I'm more of a Cubs fan than a Sox fan. I always tell people I'm married to the Cubs. I just date the Sox. But I think the Cubs are going to have a better season. I think they're actually going to win the division. That's my personal opinion. I think the Sox are going to be good, but I think that their division is a little stiffer than the Cubs, and I think the Cubs win the division. says, if you were to pick any second string quarterback to be a starter, who would it be? For me personally, it would probably be Bruce Gradkowski for Pittsburgh Steelers. I've always liked the guy. He's a gamer. He's a mobile. He's a winner. Doesn't have the strongest arm, but the guy is a winner. And if I had to pick, like, a guy to try to win one game, it definitely is going to be Bruce Gradkowski. I also like Ryan Nassib, or I don't know if it's Nassib or Nassib. I'm not sure. But for the Giants, I like him too. Ryan, speaking of Ryan, says, what are your thoughts on Bud Budenholzer over Steve Kerr for the Coach of the Year award? I understand it. You got two teams with comparable records right there at the top of the standings in both conferences, and you got one team that doesn't have nearly as much talent as the other. I mean, you got one team that's going to probably have the MVP on it than Stephen Curry, and then you got the Atlanta Hawks, which is a roster that really not much different than last year, but now you got the best record in the East. So I understand it. Is Klay Thompson, Ryan again says, is Klay Thompson a viable number one guy on a playoff team? On a playoff team, yeah. On a championship team, I don't think so. He's a jump shot shooter primarily, and he's as good of a jump shot shooter as he is, I don't know if he can be a number one guy on a championship level team. But he doesn't have to be, because it's on the team with Stephen Curry, who can create for other people and score himself. So Ryan again says, if you could pick one player to build a franchise around, which one will it be? Would it be Jose Altuve, Manny Machado, or Jose Abreu? I don't have to say Abreu. Only reason I wouldn't pick out Machado is because of the injury history. You got to look at the fact that Abreu is, I think, a little bit older than all three of those guys. But I mean, that guy is a hitting machine. I mean, he's going to be a consistent run producer for the next 10, 12 years. So I pick him. King Ralph says, what are 3 features that you think all sports games should have? For example, playoff mode or face scan abilities. First and foremost, you should be able to create and edit rosters. That's, to me, you got to have that. Secondly, to augment that, you got to also be able to share those rosters. Third, you should always have a franchise mode that allows you to control more than one team, preferably all. That's me. That's my personal opinion. That kid from Philly, 215, says the best two-way point guard in the NBA is who? It's got to be Russell Westbrook. I mean, he has his flaws in regards to maybe not creating for teammates as much. He kind of stockpiles assists at one portion of the game and then just goes back to shooting a ton of shots. But he's a beast on defense with great effort on offense. So I'd still have to give him the nod as the best two-way point guard. Chris Paul gets a lot of steals, but he doesn't body up on defense the way Russell Westbrook does. Chicago sports fan again says, do you think the Scott Brooks firing will affect the Thunder's game on the floor next season? Well, yeah. I mean, anytime a head coach gets fired, it's going to affect the team on the floor. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why you fire or hire a guy to affect the game on the on the floor. I don't know. I think that if Durant's healthy this year, I think they're still in it. They're right there as one of the best teams in the West. But I don't think he got fired so much for this season. I think it was just a collective underachievement kind of thing. Simon, Torvey Sunland, says, what went wrong for Rajon Rondo with the Mavs? In my personal opinion, this was a bad matchup to begin with. You got a guy like Rondo who's known for having a little bit of issue with authority, and then you got a really authoritative, strong-hand head coach like Carlisle. To me, that was just oil and water. That was never going to work out. I don't know what they were looking for, maybe to catch lightning in the bottle for half of a season, but as we can tell, it didn't work out. Simon also says, was OKC right to fire Scott Brooks? I was kind of touching on that before. I didn't say whether or not I agree with it. I think that I understand it, and sometimes you do need a switch. The other thing we don't know is, how does Kevin Durant feel about Scott Brooks? Because right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder is in a mode of trying to hold on to Durant when he becomes a free agent. They need to bring in a coach for this coming season that he believes in, because this is going to more likely be their last chance to make a pitch towards him. Brandon Tideman says, the thoughts on Kawhi Leonard winning Defensive Player of the Year? I can't argue with it too much. I mean, there's some other people who deserve consideration. You got DeAndre Jordan, you got Jimmy Butler, a few other people, Anthony Davis, but who can argue with Kawhi Leonard? I mean, bodies up. gets steals off the ball, gets steals on the ball, long arms. You can't really argue with it too much. Six Bird says, are you a fan of The Ultimate Fighter? If so, what do you think of the new season? I've really never really watched The Ultimate Fighter in depth, to be totally honest. I'm giving it a thought this season, and I got them available to me on DVR or on demand. So I haven't really made up my mind if I'm going to delve deep into it. I kind of keep abreast of what's going on because it tells me about new prospects. But I don't know. We'll see. King Marglow says, do you think that Anthony Davis will consider signing with the Chicago Bulls when his contract ends? As a Bulls fan, you gotta hope that happens. I mean, I still believe in Derrick Rose. And from an on-the-floor standpoint, a business standpoint, you have pretty much the two best players in the NBA from Chicago playing for the Bulls. Two of the better players in the league, too. I mean, to me, I think you sacrifice just about everything except for Rose and Butler to do that. I mean, I love Noah, but whatever. Jovan Radovanovic. I don't know why I'm messing it up because I'm on the camera. I usually get it right? He says, who wins the EuroLeague title? Real Madrid, Fenerbahce, I think that's how you say it, CSKA, or Olympiacos? For me personally, I got to go with CSKA. I just think that they'll take down Real Madrid in the finals of the Final Four. If you just look at, I didn't really see the games more or less, but I'm looking at following the season. I think CSKA's 12-2, and looking at the highlights from what happened in the playoffs, to me, CSKA looked a little bit more impressive, but we'll see. Emerson Jorge says, if you could go back to the 2008 NBA draft, would you still draft D Rose, knowing what's going to happen? If not, who? I would still draft D Rose. People will forget, I mean, he's already won an MVP, led the team to Eastern Conference Finals. We don't know what's going to happen yet this season. Book's not closed or done on D Rose. ATG Ball Out says, do you think that the Spurs are still a threat to win it all after seeing Leonard's performance? Ball Out. They are a threat to win it all. Absolutely. They're in a tough series right now with Clippers, but you still would have to say, yes, this team is a threat to win it all. I mean, the Spurs are one of the teams till they eliminated. You got to consider them because of their past successes to be a legitimate threat. HDG Ball Out again says, I'm interested in being a writer. What would be best to start writing stories, a typewriter or a laptop? Well, you don't need a typewriter at all. I mean, nobody really uses a typewriter anymore. A laptop is pretty much what you would want to do. Anything that really gives you some online access and is comfortable for you to write on is what you want, because you got to be able to get your stuff out as quickly or as efficiently as possible, and a laptop's going to do that for you better. Yvonne's back, and he says, do you think that the turnover in the last seconds of the game is going to affect Rose and the Bulls going to Game 5? Well, Game 5 was last night, and I do think it did affect Rose. I think at first he was a little tentative, and it turned into a bad shooting night. He turned the ball over a bunch of times again. He's thinking again, and he'd gone through a stretch where he wasn't thinking. He was just playing, more so reacting, and I think that he has to relax, let Game 4 go, and come back and close this out in Game 6. The Bulls need him. A lot of people talk about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's been great, but the Bulls are only going to go as far as Derrick Rose can take him. Emerson Jorge again says, what do you think about the Milwaukee and Chicago series? So this is what we were just talking about. I think Milwaukee deserves a lot of credit for how well they've been playing on defense and taking advantage of their length. But most of what's going on right now is the Bulls' failure to play up to their level. Milwaukee deserves some credit because they are playing good defense, but the Bulls are giving these games away more so than they're losing them. So, or more so than Milwaukee's winning them, I should say. Devin Martinez says, how good do you think the Wild Blackhawks series will be? Well, he has the Wild in 7. I mean, I really can't argue with that. The team know each other very well. It's the third time in a row they've met in the postseason. The Wild has been great on the road all season. Chicago has to tighten up on defense. They are their penalty killing percentage is not high enough, and on top of that, giving up too many goals a game, well over 3 goals a game. So they got to stop. They got to tighten up things on defense. Corey Crawford starts Game 1 in net. Jalen Cook says, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate Extreme Rules 2015? Now, I was there. It was awesome. Me and Franchise Play Jr. were there, and I would rate it overall, subtracting the excitement of being there, probably would rate it about a 7. Had some really cool matches, but some matches too, so about a 7. Tyler Knowles says, who do you think has a better chance of beating Demetrius Johnson, John Dodson, or Henry Cejudo? I think they both have an equal chance. I would still take Mighty Mouse over both of them, but he's already beaten Dodson, and the speed edge over Henry is going to be huge. But the thing about when he fights Henry's probably going to be the only guy that he won't have success against on the ground. So he's going to have to keep it standing. So it's interesting. It's not a blowout in either way, but I'd still take Mighty Mouse. Tyler says, how do you feel about Spike Lee being involved in the NBA 2K16 My Career storyline? I think it's intriguing. We'll see what happens with it. At least it's not Chirac, which I personally don't like. I obviously haven't seen the movie. I just don't like the title of the movie. I don't like people glorifying that whole violence thing in Chicago. Don't use that term like it's cool. We from Chirac. And that's a shame. That's nothing to be happy about. So I don't like the title of that movie. That's a whole nother Oprah show. But yeah, we'll see how it works out in terms of the game. Tyler Knowles says, do you think EA Sports will show anything at E3 for Madden NFL 16? I don't know. I doubt it, really. Or if they do, it'll be some kind of little sizzle trailer that's probably not any gameplay or whatever. But we'll see. Last but not least, we got Tyler again saying, if Mayweather versus Pacquiao has a controversial decision, do you think they'll have a rematch? Absolutely. I don't even know if the ending has to be all that controversial. If the fight is anywhere somewhat close at all, there's going to be a rematch. There's too much money to be made in not having another rematch. I mean, think about it. I mean, it's going to be sick, So I think there will be a rematch. Unless somebody gets absolutely blown out of the water, there's going to be a rematch. So that's it for this episode of Ask FP. Y'all tell me how this one went. New thing altogether, the whole, changing stuff up. I appreciate y'all watching. God bless.